Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today, I have an unbelievable story about a husband who discovered his wife's affair and plotted an epic revenge against her and her lover. My name doesn't matter, not in the grand scheme of things, not really. I'm just a guy, the kind of guy you'd see at the supermarket, picking up a six-pack of beer or mowing the lawn on a Sunday afternoon. I'm a bit of a whiz with computers and I teach specialists by profession, solving other people's tech problems for a good part of the last 2 decades. My job is simple: find the error and fix the error, black and white, no shades of gray life. As it turns out, isn't coded the same way I've been married to my high school sweetheart. Let's call her S for 15 years. The stuff dreams are made of, right? A classic love story of best friends turned lovers turned life partners, walking down the path of life hand in hand. We did everything right. Got decent jobs, bought a cozy little house in the suburbs, and adopted a cat. Life took on a comfortable, if somewhat predictable routine: wake up, get ready, eat breakfast, go to work, come back home, have dinner, watch some TV, and then sleep only to do it all over again. The next day, rinse and repeat. Our conversations mostly revolved around who would take out the trash, walk the cat. Yep. You heard me, walk the cat, and what we should get from the grocery store. We were like two ships passing in the night, only docking at the port for occasional refueling. Don't get me wrong. It wasn't bad. Not at all. It was comfortable, safe. There were no wild arguments or bouts of intense passion. The days of quick kisses in the school hallway and long drives with no destination in mind were long past us. The excitement and thrill of the chase had faded away, leaving behind a steady rhythm. It was the quiet of companionship, of knowing that the other person was just there. Even when the lights were out, we didn't have kids, didn't want any. Both of us were career-oriented and valued our independence. Plus, the world has enough people as it is, and kids, well, they complicate things. We were content with our little family of two and our cat. We would spend our free time walking in the park, going on weekend drives, or just lounging around at home, lost in our own worlds with our cat hanging around. But as I would soon discover, life had a different script for me. Definitely one that I never signed up for. One Saturday, I chose to tackle a neglected task: sorting the attic. It's always been a chaotic space, but the extreme weather gave me an excuse to stay inside. So I grabbed a flashlight and started the chore amid the clutter. I found a small wooden box hidden under some old blankets. It seemed insignificant, but I felt compelled to look inside. Inside, I found envelopes sealed with red wax filled with declarations of love. They were written to my wife, signed by an unfamiliar name. My first thought was disbelief. Could this be true? Is my wife in a relationship with a stranger? The letters suggested they shared moments and promises. Days went by and all I could think about were those letters. The words were seared into my mind. Who the hell was this man? Why was he writing to my wife? I decided it was time to confront my wife about my discovery. One evening after dinner, I found the courage to bring up the topic. She was out on the lanai, sitting in her favorite chair, engrossed in her novel. And I, with the box of letters in my hands, approached her. As I presented the box, I watched her face change. A frown crept onto her face. Her eyes widened and darted from me to the box. I said to her, "I found these in the attic." She looked at the box and then back at me. She then says, "I don't know what these are." She replied, "Open it." I insisted. She hesitated, but eventually opened the box and pulled out a letter. As she started reading, I noticed her face turned pale. She stopped halfway, looked at me, and said, "It's not what it looks like." What? "But these letters are addressed to you, and they're clearly romantic," I pointed out. "So tell me, who is he? I don't owe you an explanation." She fired back. Then she stood up. She seemed flustered, and her defensiveness only fueled my suspicions. I was taken aback by her response. Our years of companionship had always been based on trust and honesty. This defensive attitude was new, alarming, and it further deepened my doubts. This confrontation, far from giving me answers, only piled on more questions. I was left staring at my wife, a woman who now felt like someone I didn't even know. In the days following our confrontation, I found myself caught in a vortex of doubts. I began to observe my wife with new eyes. She has started spending more time outside the house. Her reasons: always vague business meetings, get togethers with friends, shopping excursions. The list went on. Her dressing style had also transformed. She started wearing trendier, younger looking clothes and sporting accessories she had never been interested in before. It was as if she was trying to impress someone, and that someone was definitely not me. She had completely changed in a matter of days, and it was disturbing to watch. She would carry on like I wasn't even there. My wife wasn't a techie person like me, even though she had a laptop and a smartphone. She barely used her laptop, and she always used her phone a lot. I investigated what I could see on the surface. I looked through her laptop, but couldn't find anything. And surprisingly, I looked through her phone, mostly when she wasn't around. She didn't have a password on her phone. I looked through our phone bill. It was her usual contacts, a couple of her friends and her two sisters. I wanted to see if I could track her movements. I thought about a GPS tracker, but in New Jersey, it's illegal. And the law says it might be considered stalking. So that thought went out the window. This whole ordeal was stressing me out. So I did some research on some private investigators in my area. I came across a former police officer who didn't retire, and he started up his own investigative service while he was still a cop, but his business took off in his second year and he left the police force. When I met the private investigator, I gave him the box of letters and told him about the confrontation I had with my wife regarding these letters. I supplied him with all the necessary details: my wife's routine, her work address, and the names of her close friends. The investigator asked me to give him 2 weeks, and then he told me to continue life as normal, also maybe take her out to dinner, or something to make her think that maybe it was a misunderstanding and the letters didn't bother you. Well, the detective was right on the money. He called, he had news. And from the tone of his voice, I knew it wasn't good. My meeting with the private investigator was at a roadside cafe. He slid an envelope across the table to me. Inside, a collection of pictures confirmed my worst fears. My wife, the woman I spent half my life with, was having an affair. The photos were shocking. In one photo, she had the balls to hang out with this man near my job. She was off that day in a nearby restaurant. Oh, that's not all. 2 times, the investigator caught them going to a hotel, and he caught them getting busy in her car, which I bought her. All I did was shake my head. The guy she was with don't know him. The investigator looks at me and told me to try to keep my emotions in check before going home. I thanked the private investigator and left with all of the information in my hand. I didn't immediately go home. I went back to my office and locked them in my desk. When I went home, my wife wasn't home yet. So I took the opportunity to open up 2 new accounts at my bank and started to move some money over to them. We had one joint bank account, mostly to pay bills, and a small savings account. Then I went out to the garage and found a suitcase. I started packing some things because I didn't want her to know what I was doing. So I left the suitcase in the garage behind some boxes. About an hour later, my wife came home. I was sitting in the home office on the computer, looking at divorce lawyers, and made an appointment online to consult with an attorney the next day. My wife comes in and says she is going out with some friends. My response was okay, and I didn't say anything else. She asked me, was I okay? And I said, yes, I am. Well, when she left later that night, I continued to pack some things, went to a nearby extended stay hotel, checked in, and dropped off my things. I didn't stay. I just wanted to have a place to lay my head temporarily. Oh. My wife didn't get home till almost 3 in the morning, and I didn't confront her. I had already made my mind up. The divorce attorney I made the appointment with told me 2 things. He said, New Jersey is a no-fault divorce state, but it's not a pure no-fault divorce state. A spouse can seek a divorce based on fault grounds. When I met with the divorce attorney, I gave him everything. I had copies of the letters and copies of the photos and videos. So I filed for divorce based on adultery, and it was set in motion, but I wasn't done. My behavior towards my wife changed overnight. Instead of the cold distance, I showered her with affection and attention. I bought her flowers, took her out to dinner, and complimented her daily. My demeanor didn't raise any suspicions. It only seemed like I was trying to rekindle the dying flames of our relationship. The idea of a charity event popped in my mind one day. It seemed like the perfect setting for my plan, an event where all our friends and family would be present, an event where her lover, a man who I didn't know, but my private investigator found out who he was, and I made it to where he couldn't refuse an invitation. I began to meticulously arrange the event. I ensured every detail was taken care of, from the decoration to the food, from the guest list to the seating arrangement. My wife was surprised, but pleased with the newfound enthusiasm. She loved being the center of attention, and this event was a perfect platform. Oh, my poor wife. She had no idea what was in store for her. The day of the event came. I looked at my wife, radiant in her evening gown, clueless about what was about to happen. I looked at the man, her lover, trying to blend in with the crowd, unaware that he was about to be exposed as well. The stage was set, the actors in place. It was time for my revenge to play out. The charity event was in full swing. Music filled the air, laughter echoed around the room, and the atmosphere was electric. It was finally time to put my plan into action. With the glass of champagne in my hand, I moved to the center of the room and clinked my glass, signaling for everyone's attention. Once the room had quieted down, I started speaking. I talked about the charity, about how we're all gathered for a good cause. I thanked everyone for their support. Then I mentioned the special surprise, a video montage of our lives, my wife's and mine. The crowd cheered, looking forward to a sweet trip down memory lane. As the video started playing on the large screen, there were moments of shared laughter and awes, but then the tone changed. Pictures and clips of my wife and her lover started to flash, their secret rendezvous, their intimate moments. Everything was up there for everyone to see. The room turned silent. People gasped. My wife and her lover looked at each other in shock. Then at me, their faces turned white, their eyes wide with horror. I stood there watching their reaction, smiling at them. Well, those two didn't stick around. My wife rushed out of the room, followed by her lover. In the aftermath of the event, the consequences were immediate and severe. My wife, once the queen of her social circle, was now an outcast. She faced the brunt of the disgrace. The people she called her friends turned their backs on her. Her lover, the man who pledged his love in the secret letters, made himself scarce. He was nowhere to be found, leaving her alone to bear the humiliation. After that, I never went back to the house. She did, of course. And about 6 weeks later, she was served with the divorce papers. At the divorce hearing, my wife didn't try for alimony, but she wanted the house all to herself, and I wasn't having that. I didn't mind splitting the equity with her, but I wasn't going to just bow down and give it all to her. After all, there was $300,000 in equity in that house. Well, the judge granted the divorce, and we had to split the equity 50-50 when we sold the house. I had chosen to move out of the house, so the judge gave me a little over a month to get the rest of my things. About 7 months after the divorce, the house was sold, and that was that. I collected my check and went on with my life. I never heard or saw my ex-wife again. I used some of the money to buy another home in another city, a little further from my job. Anyway, I don't know whatever happened to my ex-wife's affair partner. Like I said, he vanished after they were both exposed. If you found this story gripping, please like, comment, and subscribe for more incredible tales. And don't forget to hit the notification bell so you never miss an update.
Hey everyone! Welcome back to the channel. Today, I have a shocking story about a husband who uncovered his wife's infidelity through his son's drone footage. The sun shone its brightest and birds chirped their sweetest songs. I had told my son to fly his drone over our house because he wanted to take pictures of it from above. Maybe do some cool flips or something for fun on Easter Sunday afternoon. What he saw instead would change my life in a flash and forever. But this is how it all started. I had just got back from being away in Southern California on a business trip. More like a company project that needed to be complete before returning home. But before I left, I bought my son a drone as a surprise gift. I told him to have fun and to be careful with it. A few days go by and my son is sending pictures while I am away, showing off the pictures he is taking with the drone and telling me how much he loves what the drone can do. Surprisingly, he got some real nice shots and can get pretty close shots. Few more days go by and one day my son calls me and says he's going to go to his friend's house that's just down the street and hang out and play some video games. He said he already asked his mother, could he go? And she said he could. He mentioned that it was going to show his friend the new drone and show him what it can do. As the days go by, my son is sending me pictures of what shots he took while he was at his friend's house. I was so excited to see the pictures. And I noticed right away that one of them he took while him and his friend were walking the neighborhood, but it wasn't just any shot. It looked like my son's drone caught an alligator snatching a bird while the bird was looking for fish. I tell my son in a text to be careful with the drone being so close to the water. He said he wasn't that close. He zoomed in a little but didn't realize the drone caught his shot like that. I get back from my work project, and I'm expecting to see my son's friend at the house when I get home. But no one was home. About a half hour later, my son and wife come in the door and I greet them both. My wife looks like she just finished running a marathon and my son was carrying the drone. I look at him and ask, "Where's your friend? He had to go home early." My son said, with an innocent face that made me think he was telling the truth, but still didn't believe him. My son said, after they were playing around in the neighborhood, they went to a football game. I did not call him out on it, just went to the kitchen to get some dinner. The next day I come home from work and my son's friend is there again, playing video games with him. I greet them both and ask, "What are you guys up to?" They said they were watching TV, but then got distracted by a science documentary that was on about drones. My son then asked me, could he and his friend go to the park and play with the drone? I said, sure, make sure you keep your phone on you just in case I need to check on you. A few hours go by and my son walks through the door and I asked, did he have fun at the park? He said, yes, but he wanted to show me something. I looked up at him and said, did he get some cool drone shots? He said no, and then tears started rolling down his face. He said he and his friend were playing with the drone. When they saw a woman sitting on a bench that looked like my wife, they zoomed in to see if it was her. But then she got up and walked away. So he maneuvered the drone's camera to follow her as she walked through this grassy field and went inside someone's house with another man. He said she walked through his door and he zoomed in so close, you could see they were kissing. I was in shock. I couldn't believe it. And when I finally did, I grabbed my cell phone and texted her, "What are you doing?" She responded with, "Just hanging out." And then she added a smiley face emoji. I said, "Who are you hanging out with?" She replied with a name that didn't sound familiar. I said, "The person's name you just sent me doesn't ring any bells. Can I have your address?" That's when she didn't respond. I sent her a text telling her I know where she is. "Our son's drone caught you kissing another man." I told her there was nothing you can say to refute the footage the drone has. She then sends me a text to let me know she is on her way home. She then walks through the door yelling, asking me, "What am I talking about?" I grabbed my son's drone and show her. And I said, "Really? You do this after 26 years? She looks at the footage and claims it's not her. Until the drone catches her turning sideways while she is walking into the man's house. After they kissed, I look at her and tell her that her world has just changed. Later that evening, we would talk more about how things were going to change for both of us. I told her the sad thing is, our son had to witness that while he was playing with his friend and it's no telling what his friend saw. She starts crying and starts to give me excuses as to why she was cheating on me. I told her I didn't want to hear it. You betrayed our family for your own selfish gratification. I then said, if you were going to cheat, why do it so close to home? She could not give me an answer. I then told her she needs to leave. She looks at me and begs me not to throw her out. I said, apparently from the drone footage you have somewhere to go. I told her you broke my heart into a million pieces, and I don't think I can come back from this. You just destroyed everything we worked so hard for in one moment, and all because you wanted some excitement outside of your marriage. I'm not going to let you come back into our home again. At least not to live. You need to find somewhere else to live. She asked if I was kicking her out of our house. And I said, yes, if you can't respect me enough not to do this to me, then why should we share a roof? I told her she could visit from time to time, but there's no way in hell that she would be living here again with our son. Then my wife left for good. The next day when I came home from work, all of her stuff was gone. She had put it into storage because we both own property together. The next day, I reached out to a family friend and told him what happened. He was in absolute shock and asked what I was going to do. I told him our marriage is over. I can't get over the fact that she cheated on me so close to home. As the days go by, my wife calls me and wants to make arrangements to get some of her things. I told her she can come by when I am home after work. She then informs me she is going to hire a lawyer to fight for the house. The only thing I said was, okay, her name is not on the house. And the only thing that worries me is that we have been married for so long. I don't want to give her a dime while she is sleeping with this guy. The next day my wife comes over to pick up some of her things. And I have a few last words with her. I told her I am kind of glad she is leaving because since she is cheating on me and now trying to take my house before we even get divorced, I have no respect for her. But I told her the lawyers will work it out. I told her to hurry up and get her things so she can leave. The next day while at work, one of my coworkers came up to ask, "Is it true that my wife and I are getting a divorce?" I told her yes, it's true. She wanted to know what happened, but I told her that I didn't want to discuss it right now. She understood and said if I needed someone to talk to, she was there to listen. I don't know how she found out, but I didn't care at the moment. The whole ordeal has taken a toll on me. I have to find the strength to make the call to an attorney to get this process started. I am not sure how long it will take to get the divorce finalized. I just hope it's quick. I don't want to be married to her anymore. I wasted 26 years and I don't even know if this is the first time. If it wasn't for my son's drone, I would have never found out my wife's betrayal. Never. I never even fathomed she was cheating, didn't even cross my mind. That's why this is so heartbreaking. How did I miss the signs? There is no telling what she has done while out on her own, or who all she's been seeing during those times when we were not together. Not only am I hurt about marrying an unfaithful woman, but now the whole process will probably take time and money, which feels like salt being poured into a gaping wound. So I will have to toughen up and get over it. Right now, the only thought I have in my head is divorce and hope I don't have to give her any money. She has her own job and make just a little less than me. So I think I will be okay. I am just torn up. If this story shocked you, please like, comment, and subscribe for more unbelievable tales. Hit the bell icon to stay updated with our latest videos. Until next time.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today, I have an astonishing story about a husband who discovered his flight attendant wife's shocking affair after 18 years of marriage. It happened that destroyed it all. My wife and I had a strong marriage, or so I thought. She became a flight attendant at a very young age, 29, and she was very ambitious. Her family was wealthy because her father was a big real estate tycoon, but she wanted to make her own money. She traveled to many places, different countries, Europe and Canada, to name a few places. At the beginning of our marriage, she was very attentive. Even when flying to all of these different places, she always ensured she would reach out to me. Communication was strong. When she was with some of her other flight attendants, she always took selfies of different places, and it looked like she was having lots of fun. I was happy for her. When she would come home, we would enjoy each other's company until she had to travel again. I made sure she was taken care of mentally and financially. Flight attendants don't start out making a lot of money. She started making $35,000 per year, and she has been a flight attendant for almost 16 years. She is up to $69,000 per year. We lived in a nice home and 2 nice cars. I own 2 real estate brokerage firms, so I made enough to support both of us, even if she didn't work. But I had one physical quality that she didn't like. My wife is 5 feet 11 inches, and I am 5 feet 8 inches. So yeah, I am shorter than my wife. We have been married for 18 years, and I really thought we overcame that. But that was about to change. Well, on her last trip, when she landed, surprisingly, I didn't hear from my wife until the next day, which was strange. But I let it go. She probably needed a day to herself. When she did call, I didn't question her about it. I was just happy to hear her voice. She apologized for not calling and promised she wouldn't do it again. I simply told her not to worry about it. She told me she would be home in a few days. We chatted a bit longer, then hung up. Fast forward a few days, she came home. I picked her up from the airport, and it was a little strange because she didn't talk much. She is a blabbermouth when she comes home. But this time, that wasn't the case. She was quiet. I asked her if everything was okay, and she said yes, and that she was tired. I didn't press her any further. I figured she would open up when she was ready. We got home, I fixed dinner, and we watched a movie together. Again, not much talking. After the movie, she went upstairs and said she was going to bed. I told her I would be up shortly. Well, her actions were unsettling when I walked into the bedroom. I thought she was asleep, but she was on her phone and quickly put her phone away. The only thing I said to her was I thought she was asleep. And she said one of her coworkers sent her some pictures of them. She finally went to bed and I stayed up a little longer, just thinking about how strange her behavior had been since she came home. The next morning, I got up early and went to the gym. I came home and she was still asleep. I made breakfast and left a note telling her I would see her later. While I was at the office, another flight attendant who works with my wife, she is a good friend of mine, sent me a text asking, "Can we meet?" I was perplexed, but I said, sure. We met at a 24-hour diner. When we met, she had tears in her eyes. I was thinking, why is she crying? She told me that my wife was cheating on me with one of the new flight attendants. She showed me pictures and I was in disbelief. I asked her if she was sure about what she was saying. She said yes. And she even heard them planning their next rendezvous. I didn't want to believe it. I wanted to think there was another explanation for what she was seeing and hearing, but I knew in my gut that she was telling me the truth. I asked her why she was telling me this. She said that we had been friends for a long time and she didn't want to see me get hurt. Then she said, you know, she is only married to you for your money. I was stunned. I never thought my wife would do something like this to me. I asked her if she was sure about what she was saying. And again, she said yes. I thanked her for telling me and went back to the office. My head was spinning. I couldn't focus on work. I had to make a decision and I had to make it fast. I decided not to confront my wife when I got home. I wanted to do some research first. I didn't want her to know anything or how I found out she was cheating. When I got home, my wife wasn't home. I wasn't surprised and she didn't tell me she was leaving. I quickly learned in Rhode Island I can sue her and she wouldn't be eligible for alimony, but I didn't want to just have my friend's pictures as proof. After all, it only showed them holding hands and hugging, but my friend said my wife was cheating. My next step was to call an attorney and ask him a few questions about divorce laws in Rhode Island and see what he tells me. Then I planned to hire a private investigator and pay for him to follow her. And that's exactly what I am going to do. As the days go by, I haven't let my wife know anything. I kept playing it off that our relationship was still going strong, taking her out to dinner, spoiling her with small gifts, flowers, anything to distract her. Fast forward a day. My wife tells me that in a couple of days, she has to travel again. And she told me where she was going. She gave me all the information. The day she told me that, I reached out to my friend who told me my wife was cheating and asked if they are traveling again. To my surprise, she said they were not. I asked her again, are you sure? She said yes. She even sent me a screenshot of her schedule. I was absolutely shocked. My wife lied to me. At that moment, I called a private investigator right away and set up a meeting with him. Later that day, I met with the PI, gave him all the information, pictures of her and a picture of her friend who was relaying information to me. I told him that a good friend of mine is telling me that my wife is cheating on me with a fellow flight attendant. And then my wife lied to me and said she was traveling for work again. But her friend told me she was not traveling. I gave the private investigator everything. The screenshot my friend sent me and pictures of my wife. I hired him right then and there and told him to start right away. The day my wife was supposed to leave, I kissed her goodbye and told her I would see her soon. She didn't say anything other than, I love you. She even had her uniform on when she left. As she walked out the door, I knew she would be in for a surprise for what I had in store for her. 3 days went by, and I haven't heard from the private investigator, and I haven't heard from my wife as well. At that point, I knew she was cheating. The next day, I called the divorce attorney and asked him if my wife was entitled to any alimony in the state of Rhode Island if she cheated. He told me that she was not. I asked him what I needed to do to make sure I don't get taken advantage of. He told me I need proof and a lot of it. The private investigator called me 2 days later and told me he had tons of evidence. My wife was not only cheating, but she was sleeping with multiple people. I couldn't believe it. The private investigator told me that my wife was staying in the hotel for days at a time, and the hotel she frequently stayed at was an hour away. The private investigator showed me everything he had, and I was disgusted. I couldn't even look at my wife the same ever again. I asked him if he could send me everything he had, and he did. After I got the footage from the private investigator of my wife cheating and turned it over to my attorney, he told me from the looks of it, I had an open and shut case and that he didn't think she would get any alimony. My wife was scheduled to come back home in 2 days, and I had to act like everything was normal. So when she did come back, I asked her how her trip was. She said it was good and that she missed me. I told her I missed her too, and we hugged each other. As we hugged, I couldn't help but to think about how she could lie so easily and how many other guys she was sleeping with. When my wife tried to initiate intimacy, I told her I wasn't in the mood. I wasn't feeling well. I told her I might have food poisoning, which was a total lie. I just couldn't do it. I couldn't be intimate with her anymore. The thought of her being with other guys made me sick. The next day, she tells me she was going to the salon to get her nails done and get her hair done as well. When she told me that, all I could think about was her cheating on me again. And at that point, I didn't care anymore. Today was the day I was going to tell the lawyer to file for divorce on my behalf. Before I called the lawyer, I called a private investigator and asked him, could he find out who the guy was that was working with her, the fellow flight attendant? He told me he could and that he would get back to me as soon as possible. About an hour later, he called me back and told me he found out who the guy was and gave me his name, address, phone number, everything. I then relayed all of that information to my lawyer and told him to use it in the divorce proceedings. As the days and weeks go by, I am making preparations to move my money and other assets around. One day, my friend calls me and tells me that she saw my wife with the other flight attendant at the mall. I told her I am in the process of divorcing her and told her at this point, I don't care. I told her right now, I have to protect myself financially in the divorce hearing. After talking to her, I left the office early to pack a few things and leave. I know she is out with her AP, so I just took a few things and stayed in one of the rental properties I own. Later that night, my soon-to-be ex-wife is blowing up my phone, asking where I am. I didn't answer. She must have sent hundreds of text messages, but still I didn't answer either one. A few days go by, I haven't gone back home. My soon-to-be ex-wife shows up at my office and is wondering why I left. I simply told her, you will hear from my lawyer. She looks at me funny and I politely told her to leave the premises. As she walks away, she looks back at me with this confused look on her face. A few more days go by and my attorney calls me and lets me know that my wife was served with divorce papers and that the divorce hearing is set for next month. Fast forward a week. I haven't heard from my soon-to-be ex-wife at all. I didn't even go by the house. I figured she would have just taken all of her stuff and left by now. I was wrong. When I went by the house to get my mail, I noticed that all of her stuff was still there. So I figured she must be out with her AP. I go inside the house and I see a note on the kitchen counter. It reads, I know you are going through a lot right now and I know you are mad at me, but I just want to let you know, I am sorry for what I did. I love you and I hope one day you can forgive me. I balled it up and threw it in the trash can. I couldn't believe she had the nerve to write me a note like that. At the hearing, my wife's lawyer tried to get me to pay almost $8,000 a month in alimony. And when he presented that to the judge, my lawyer presented the evidence of my wife cheating, and you could hear her gasp. And the judge flat out told her, I am not awarding you alimony. Then the judge asked her attorney, did you not inform your client that here in Rhode Island, cheating affects alimony? And their attorney says, that shouldn't be a factor. And the judge says, it does here in Rhode Island and you know that. And you can appeal the decision if you like. All in all, I didn't have to pay any alimony. And the judge told us to sell the house and split the equity. My mistake was adding her to the title, huge mistake. She ended up walking away with $75,000 of my equity. Well, the good thing about my divorce is I don't have to pay any alimony, which saved me a lot of money. My private investigator found out more information about the other flight attendant my ex-wife was having an affair with. He was a tall guy, 6 feet 4 inches, and he had a wife and 2 kids, and she was a stay-at-home mom. She divorced him, and she ended up getting child support and alimony from him. My personal note to Tony, I want to thank you for taking the time to upload my story and to let people know, always pay attention to red flags. My ex-wife's red flag was, I didn't pay attention to her remarks about my height. If you found this story gripping, please like, comment, and subscribe for more incredible tales. And don't forget to hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel, your go-to storyteller for tales that explore the depths of relationships, family dynamics, and the unexpected twists life throws at us. Today, I have a story that is sure to captivate and inspire you. It's titled, She stole my fiancé and fired me, but fate had other plans. My unbelievable comeback story. This story is a roller coaster of emotions, filled with betrayal, resilience, and an incredible turnaround. Get comfortable, because you're about to hear a tale of unexpected triumph and sweet revenge. Deborah, are you okay? Do you feel bad? Asked the maid Mary to the hotel manager. It was not customary for her to be familiar with her superiors, but the manager was really scary to look at. Deborah was incredibly pale, her always perfect hair was disheveled, and her eyes were red with tears. It was clear that she was holding on, but Mary's sincere sympathy made her chin quiver, and her eyes filled with tears. Mary wanted to bring water, but the manager stopped her. "Let's go to my office," Deborah whispered with difficulty, holding back her sobs and lowering her head, headed swiftly to her office. Mary followed Deborah, who immediately threw herself on the leather sofa and began to sob. Mary closed the door tightly and sat down next to her, compassionately stroking Deborah on her arm. She did not ask questions, knowing that the woman needed first to cry and then to speak. After a while, Deborah calmed down a little and told Mary about her misfortune. As it turned out, her husband, after 10 years of marriage, cheated on her with a young girl. "Who needs me now? I'm already 35 years old," said Deborah through her sobs. "Oh, I thought you were only a couple of years older than me," gasped Mary, who was only 21. Deborah really did look great and was always proud of it. "Mary, you're certainly pretty, but you need to take care of your figure at your age. Is it good to walk around with such a big belly?" said the manager with a condemning look. "But I'm 5 months pregnant," timidly murmured Mary. When she came to work at the hotel 3 months ago, she had to hide the fact of her pregnancy. She strongly needed this job because her fiancé was recently fired from the taxi company for his rude attitude to the client, and he could not find a job anywhere. And now Mary decided to tell her boss the truth, because soon her condition would be obvious. Hearing the news, Deborah began to cry even harder. It turned out that adultery was not the only reason for separation from her husband. Years ago, she interrupted a pregnancy at her husband's insistence, and when they finally got back on their feet and her husband wanted a son, she was no longer able to give birth to him. After a few minutes, Deborah finally managed to pull herself together, and she asked Mary to return to her work duties. The young woman headed for the door, but suddenly the manager called out to her again. "Mary, didn't you ask me recently to get your boyfriend a job?" "Yes, Paul is a very good driver. You won't regret it." "Right, but he was fired from the cab company for a reason." Deborah looked at Mary questioningly, and she lowered her eyes in a blush. "Okay, let him come in tomorrow. I'll talk to him, and maybe we'll take him, but on probation." Mary rejoiced and began to thank Deborah, but she had already stared into some papers and made it clear that the conversation was over. The next day, Paul, immaculately shaven, wearing pants and shirt perfectly ironed by Mary, stood at the entrance of the hotel. This was the chance he could not miss. Now the main thing was to make Deborah like him and pass the probationary period. The interview was quick, and Paul got the job. How successfully her fiancé was working, Mary discovered only a couple of months later when she got to the maternity hospital. She repeatedly tried to call Paul to tell him about his daughter's birth, but the phone was silent from her shift worker who came to see her. Mary heard that the day before, Paul had driven away Deborah with a suitcase and no one else had seen them. Mary did not know what to think. She cried all day long, calling hospitals and morgues, but all to no avail. Mary was waiting to be discharged so she could write to the police about her fiancé's disappearance. But when she came home with the child, she saw a miserable scrap of paper on the bed in their rented apartment. It was a note from Paul. Placing her newborn daughter on the bed, Mary started reading. Paul briefly informed her that he was leaving her for Deborah and that they were going on vacation together. At the end of it was a postscript. "The apartment is paid for to the end of the month, then pay yourself, or you can go to your aunts in the village, since your boss don't want to see you working in a hotel anymore. And as we are not married, I do not owe you anything." Mary threw herself on the bed and wept in pain, resentment, and disappointment. She realized that the fate of many young girls who got pregnant before marriage who believed their boyfriend's stories, had caught up with her. First, they had no time to get married, then they had no money, then Paul had problems with his job, and now she had to go back to the village alone with the baby to her aunt and listen to her reproaches and lectures. But she had to go back, since there was no other way out. At the threshold of her aunt's house, Mary stopped in indecision. Aunt Helen was a strict and unkind woman, and Mary was afraid of her reaction. But suddenly the door swung open. "Well, come in, don't be afraid," said Helen, quite friendly and smiling, took the baby out of Mary's hands. "How did you name your daughter?" "Victoria," Mary whispered. "Victoria means winning. It's a great name, not like yours. I never could understand why your mother named you that." Mary sighed, listening to the familiar grumbling of her aunt. She was the older sister of Mary's deceased father, and she would have been grandmother to her niece by age. Helen, noticing the gloomy expression on the girl's face, stumped. "Okay, darling, I am not going to ask questions now, so don't worry. We need to take care of the baby, and first of all to feed her." Mary cried and told her aunt that she could not feed her daughter because she had lost her milk. Helen gasped and realized that her niece had a serious problem in the city. When the baby girl was bathed, changed her clothes, and fed with formula, she fell asleep, and Helen thought about what they should do next. The woman said that an old rich woman lived in their village. The locals did not like her, and she, due to her contentious character, did not let anyone near her and seldom communicated with anyone except Helen. In recent years, Mrs. Carter became quite sick and could not go to the store or cook her own food, so Helen helped her as much as she could. But now the situation had changed. It had become difficult for Helen to help Mrs. Carter because of her age, so she suggested that Mary get a job at Mrs. Carter's house as a helper. Mary was in dire need of money and work, but she still had doubts since she had a little baby in her arms. "Don't worry, I'll take care of Victoria," assured Mary's aunt. "This is your own home, and you and I are the family." There was so much tenderness and warmth in her voice that Mary simply could not believe her ears. And for the first time in her life, Helen told her niece about her hard fate, about her 3 miscarriages in her youth, about how her husband had left her for someone else, and how she had suffered. And Mary finally understood much of what was incomprehensible to her in her aunt's behavior when she was a teenager. "And don't be afraid of Mrs. Carter, she only looks so formidable. But in fact, she's an unhappy elderly woman," said Helen. And in great secret, she told her niece the Mrs. Carter's sad story. It was all about her daughter Caroline. The girl had been in love with a poor guy Tom since high school, and Mrs. Carter was against it and forbade them to date. When the guy was drafted into the army, Mrs. Carter arranged with the local mailman and intercepted the lovers' letters to each other. Tom, thinking that Caroline had forgotten about him, stopped writing to her and returned from the army already with his bride. Mrs. Carter was pleased. Her plan had succeeded. And on the day of Tom's wedding, Mrs. Carter went to a neighboring town to visit relatives, and her daughter left home alone, took sleeping pills. When Mrs. Carter returned home the next morning, the girl was already dead. Since then, Mrs. Carter lives alone in her enormous home with her wealth. But does she need it since she destroyed her own daughter with her own hands? Mary listened to the story and promised her aunt that she would try to be patient with Mrs. Carter and not let her down. Until this moment, Mary thought that she was alone in this world, and it turned out that she had the best aunt. Everything was going great now. She would have a job, and her daughter would have a wonderful nanny ready to give her all her unspent love. The next day, Helen went to see Mrs. Carter. They talked for a long time, and at first, the woman grumbled and didn't even want to hear anything. But then, with difficulty, she agreed. At heart, Mrs. Carter knew that except Helen, she has no one to rely on, so grumbled more out of habit. The first time it was not easy for Mary with grumpy Mrs. Carter. The young woman often got home late at night and fell on her bed without energy. And it was not easy for Helen at first to cope with little Victoria. But as time went on, things gradually got better. The only room to which Mary was forbidden to enter was on the second floor, and only Mrs. Carter had the key. She did not explain the reason, and Mary tried to pretend that she was not interested. But the reason was simple. Caroline had died in this room. She had died of unhappy love and her mother's cruelty. Then, on that fateful day, Mrs. Carter had locked the girl in her room, fearing that she would go to her ex-fiancé's wedding and do something stupid. Could she have thought then that her daughter had already made up her mind, and that sleeping pills had already been prepared in her bedside table to forget herself and fall asleep forever? But there was nothing Mrs. Carter could change now. Watching Mary, she often bitterly thought that if she had not been so cruel to her daughter, then today it would be her granddaughter helping her, not Mary. 3 years had passed, little Victoria was growing up, and Mary was still caring for the elderly woman. But now more out of the call of her heart than out of duty, because they became very attached to each other. Mrs. Carter began to sick more and more often. In the evenings, she usually sat near the fireplace, which was burning in any weather, both in winter and in summer. But one day she called Mary to help her up to the second floor. It was the first time in all the years that Mary had been working there. So the girl was very surprised at such a request and readily helped Mrs. Carter. The elderly woman moved slowly, resting on each step. Finally, when she reached the locked door, she leaned against the wall, breathing heavily, and stood like that for a while, swallowing her tears. Then she held out the key to Mary. "Open it and don't ask me anything." Mary nodded and opened the door. Mrs. Carter gestured for her to stay outside and disappeared into the darkness of the room. The girl stood for a long time, listening to the sounds. Concerned, she did call out to the elderly woman. "Go away," came Mrs. Carter's muffled voice. Mary realized that the woman needed to be alone with her bitter memories and quietly went downstairs. But time passed, night fell, and Mary became anxious again. She worried about how Mrs. Carter could sit there for so long in the cold room. And finally she decided to see if she was all right. She went upstairs and called out to her again, but this time there was no answer. Mary thought that Mrs. Carter had fallen asleep, and opening the door, she went into the room. The elderly woman was really asleep in an armchair by the window, clutching her daughter's toy, a fluffy rabbit. On her lap, there was a box with Caroline's belongings. Mary looked closely at the woman again and suddenly felt that for a sleeping person, she clutched the toy too tightly. To her horror, she realized that Mrs. Carter was dead. After the funeral, Helen and Mary were surprised to find out that the woman had made a will a year ago for the only close people to her, her helpers. It was an unexpected gift for Mary and Helen. Apparently, it was Mrs. Carter's way of thanking them for their care and kindness. Another 5 years passed. One day, the hotel receptionist knocked on the door of the hostess's office. "Mary, excuse me, there's a new driver here. Are you interviewing him yourself, or should I take care of this?" "Invite him in. I'll talk to him myself," replied the hotel owner. After a couple of minutes, a man entered the office. Mary looked up and saw Paul in front of her, but he did not immediately recognize his former girlfriend in such an elegant, beautiful woman. He remembered her as a frightened, anxious girl with a huge belly, which he had accompanied to the maternity hospital. Then, breathing a sigh of relief, he went straight to Deborah, with whom he could finally spend a whole night, and he did not think at all about how his fiancée would be giving birth to their daughter in pain and crying with resentment into the pillow when the other women in the hospital would be visited by their husbands. The only problem was that the fairy tale ended quickly for him. Deborah got fed up with him after 6 months, and she quickly found a replacement. And now, this bald, unemployed loser, with no wife and children, stood before Mary and could not believe his eyes. He shifted his gaze to the desk and saw a nice framed picture. There was a handsome man hugging Mary in a white wedding dress, and a beautiful blonde girl of about 7 stood beside her. "Mary, darling, is that really you?" was all Paul could say. "I am not your darling, and I don't have a job for you," said Mary coldly. "Natalia, call security. Tell them to escort this man outside." Mary stood at the window and smiled as she watched a stunned Paul leaving the hotel. She was mentally thanking him for leaving her then because his betrayal had turned out in such a happy end for her. Narrated by Deirdre Eby. Wow, what a journey! If you found this story as gripping and inspiring as I did, make sure to hit that like button, share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. Also, hit the bell icon to get notified every time we upload a new video. Thanks for watching, and remember, no matter how tough life gets, there's always a way to turn things around. Stay strong, and Hey everyone! Welcome back to my channel. Today, I have a heart-wrenching story about betrayal, family, and unexpected twists. You won't believe what happened when my wife chose her lover over our son's birthday. One day, I fell ill and collapsed. Seeing that, my son Ethan told my wife, Madison, "Mom, we need to take him to the hospital." Hearing it, Madison uttered an unbelievable response. "I have a trip planned, so no can do." She has been spending less time at home recently. It started about 6 months ago when I took over my father's job. Despite the suddenness, I thought she might be enduring it, so I worked desperately hard at both my job and parenting. But eventually, I reached my limit and ended up being hospitalized. After being unreachable for several days on her trip, Madison called and asked to Ethan, "Where's Dad?" Then, he said something shocking. "My name is John Anderson. I turned 42 this year. I got married 8 years ago, and a year later, we had our child, living together as a family of 3. I work as a doctor. Initially, I was employed at a university hospital. But inspired by my father's dedication as a community-based private practitioner, I decided to follow in his footsteps. Half a year ago, when my father fell ill and had to be hospitalized, thinking of closing his practice, I resigned from the university hospital to take over, which made him happy. Following that, we moved to my childhood home next to the clinic. The building was old, so I mentioned to my father about wanting to renovate eventually, and he told me to do as I wished. Even after taking over, the community has continued to rely on me, which brings me daily satisfaction. I named our son Ethan, hoping he would grow up to be strong. He's in the first grade now but already expresses a desire to become a doctor and is learning German. He has exceeded my expectations and has grown into a responsible son. Sometimes, he's so mature it worries me, but seeing him play in the mud at the park reminds me he's still just a kid. My wife Madison is beautiful but capricious. Lately, she's been less inclined to help with household chores or parenting, which has been a concern. In the beginning, we shared household duties, and she participated in parenting, but that has almost ceased in the past 6 months. Occasionally, she'll take Ethan to the grocery store, but it's always me who takes him to parks or playgrounds as if it's a given. I don't mind, but we've been lacking family outings recently, so today, I suggested we all go out together. Hey, we haven't been out just the 3 of us for a while. How about we go out next Sunday? Madison, you haven't been out much with Ethan, have you? It can't be helped, I'm busy. Ethan wants to go to a movie. How about we go together this Sunday? After that, we can eat out. A movie, huh? Madison glanced at her phone and then said to me, "Well, all right. I don't have any plans anyway." That's great. Ethan will be so happy. Thank you. I'm going to take a bath and go to bed. All right. Good night. She took her phone and left the living room. Oh man, I really want to talk more with her. I want to go out and do things together. We used to talk about the future and go out together, but today was good. Usually, she would decline, so I'm honestly surprised. Hearing her agree made me happy, and I immediately told Ethan in his room. On that Sunday, Ethan, are you ready? All set. I'm ready whenever. All right. Just waiting on Madison. Ethan, where's Mom? I don't know. I knocked on Madison's door but got no response. I tried again and slowly opened the door. Madison, are you there? Opening the door, she was nowhere to be found. Maybe she's in the bathroom. At that moment, my phone rang, and it was Madison on the screen. Madison, what's up with the call? Sorry, but I can't make it today after all. Some work came up suddenly. What? You didn't mention it yesterday, did you? I said it came up all of a sudden. Just go to the movie, the 2 of you. It's not a problem without me, right? she said in a rushed tone and hung up. Oh, come on. I thought we could finally go out as a trio. Dad, what's wrong? Where's Mom? Mom got caught up with work, so it's just the two of us, okay? Okay, got it. Ethan showed a slightly sad face but then smiled at me. Feeling sorry that he was looking forward to it, I decided we'd enjoy our day, just the two of us. All right, Ethan, let's go. After the movie, how about we grab your favorite burger on the way back? Yes. We grabbed our stuff and headed to the movie theater by car. A few hours later. Did you have fun, Ethan? Yeah. It was fun. Thanks for taking me, Dad. Sure. Let's do it again. When Ethan and I got back in the evening, Madison was already home. I'm home. Sorry we're late. We went to the park and other places in the afternoon. It's fine. She replied indifferently as usual. Ethan approached her quietly. Here. This is a present for you, he said, taking something out of his backpack. What's this? Today, there was a keychain making workshop, and I made one for everyone. This one's for you. Saying that, he handed her a white star-shaped keychain. Before going to the park, we stopped by a craft workshop nearby, and Ethan wanted to do it, so he made keychains for all three of us. He chose green for himself, and I got blue. Madison accepted the present from him. It turned out well, didn't it? He said with a happy face. Well, I don't think I'll wear it. But I'll take it anyway. I'm tired. I'll be in my room. Saying that, she left the living room. Madison. I couldn't stand her tone and followed her. Hey, wait. Ethan went to all that trouble to make it. That's no way to talk. I said in a voice Ethan couldn't hear. I didn't say I didn't want it, did I? Madison. Can't you spend a bit more time at home? There are things I want to discuss. I've said it before, haven't I? I don't want to stay in this old, moldy place. Why did you quit the university hospital? That's because. I tried to explain, but she locked herself in her room. She seems to dislike that I decided to move here. I begged her to stay. I understood it was hard on her, but I wanted to talk it out, and this is what it's come to. Even if she doesn't like it, she shouldn't say that about something our kid worked hard to make. I returned to the living room with a heavy heart, where Ethan was. Maybe I should have chosen something different for Mom. He looked a bit down. Ethan, Mom's just tired from work. Hey, maybe I'll attach it to my work bag. What about you? I think I'll put it on my backpack. He smiled brightly. Madison's attitude must hurt him. It wasn't like this before. Ever since we moved here, she's become more indifferent. It can't go on. For Ethan's sake, I need to talk this through properly next time. A few days later, when I got home from work late at night, Ethan was waiting and watching TV. Sorry I'm late, Ethan. Got caught up talking to a patient. I'll make dinner in a sec. Edith. It's okay. And I folded the laundry. Wow. Thanks, Ethan. He would take the initiative to do the laundry or vacuum. He only cooks when I'm around, and since it's still a bit dangerous for him to cook alone, he is really growing up to be responsible. Dad? Oh yeah. I'll start getting dinner ready now. I'll help too. After putting down our stuff, we started preparing dinner together. Ethan, what do you want to do tomorrow? Dad's off in the afternoon, so we can do whatever you like. Yay! I'll think about it. Got it. Tomorrow is Ethan's birthday. Madison surely knows about it. I even reminded her yesterday to make sure she'd buy a present, so it should be fine. Of course, I've prepared something too, but I'm worried if he'll like it. The next morning, Madison must have come back late last night. I can hear some noises from her room now. I knocked twice. Then, hearing a low response, I opened the door to find her still in her pajamas, phone in hand. Need something? I'll be at work until noon, so please take care of Ethan. Did you get him a present? And don't forget we're going out this afternoon. I know. Don't keep repeating it. Close the door when you're done. She replied irritably, her attention returning to her phone, so I quietly closed the door as told. Really hope everything's okay. With a mix of anxiety and hope, I leaned more towards hope. Heading to the living room, Ethan was already there. Happy 7th birthday, Ethan. Here. A present for you. Thank you. Can I open it? Of course. Ethan excitedly opened the bag. Wow. Awesome. I gave him my old stethoscope, which way I used to use. My father gave it to me when I was a child, just like him now. I remember being just as thrilled when I showed it to him before. He really liked it, so now I decided to pass it on to him. But I felt bad giving just that, so I included a basketball too. Is it okay to get two? Take good care of them, okay? Sure. Seeing him like this, he still feels so much like a kid. Let's do whatever you want today. I'll wrap up work quickly and come back, so wait here with mom. Have a good work. Absolutely. I'll do my best. After getting him to eat breakfast, I let Madison know before heading to the clinic next door for work. After lunch break, when I finished work and came home, Ethan was sitting alone in the living room. Where's mom? She left a while ago. What? She said to wait here because dad would be back soon. I immediately called Madison's phone. Hello. She sounded as grumpy as usual. Madison, why aren't you here? I had something to do. I'll be back by tonight. Tonight? Today is Ethan's birthday, you know that? We said we'd go out together this afternoon. As I was scolding her over the phone, Ethan was shaking his head, signaling it was okay. All right. Make sure you're back tonight. Got it? Okay, yeah, I know. She hung up. Despite being irritated, today is Ethan's birthday. I decided to focus only on him. Ethan, what do you want to do today? I want to play basketball and want to eat your steak. Is that what you want? When I asked, he nodded enthusiastically. Then, we spent the day doing things he loves, like playing basketball and visiting a bookstore. On our way back, we bought cake. Just as the steaks were about to be ready, I checked my phone to contact Madison and saw a text message from her. It was, I'd be back today. Seeing it, I suddenly felt a wave of exhaustion. Noticing my mood, Ethan asked, Dad, are you okay? Yeah. The steaks are ready. Let's eat them together. We've got cake too. Let's eat. I celebrated his birthday by eating steak, talking about school, basketball, and his German classes. In the next late morning, I woke up almost before noon, probably due to exhaustion. Oh no. I quickly changed and left my room, only to bump into Madison. Madison, what happened yesterday? Ethan was waiting for you the whole time. I came back within the day. You both were just sleeping, weren't you? Anyway, I'm in a hurry. She hurried off to the bathroom. Oh dear. I could only let out a sigh of resignation, as well as I felt somewhat sluggish. As I slowly made my way to the living room, I found Ethan. Ethan, sorry I'm late. You must be hungry, right? You could have woken me up. It's okay. I ate some bread. Savi. I felt guilty. This had never happened before. As I was about to make some coffee, pouring water into the pot to boil it, that's when it happened. My vision blurred, and I felt so dizzy I couldn't stand. Then, I dropped the mug I was holding, and it crashed loudly to the floor. Dad, are you okay? Hearing Ethan's voice, I collapsed. Dad, are you okay? Hey, Dad. Ethan, sorry. Get Mom. Got it. Just as he was about to go get Madison, she walked into the living room, and he quickly ran up to her. Mom, we need to take him to the hospital. What? What's all this sudden? Dad collapsed. Please help. I hoped she would respond to his desperate plea. As my consciousness faded, I thought. However, her response was unexpected. I have a trip, so no can do. What? What about Dad? He'll get better soon. Besides, I'm going on a trip with my parents for about 4 days, so take care. She said to me lying on the floor, in a somewhat cheerful voice. Mom, Ethan, I'll bring you a gift, so wait here nicely with Dad. With that, she left. I couldn't believe that was happening, leaving her incapacitated husband and 7-year-old son behind. More than that, I had to let someone know for Ethan's sake for now. I managed to grab my smartphone from my pants and then lost consciousness. A few hours later, I woke up in a hospital bed. Dad. Ethan. Beside me stood Ethan, a doctor, and a few neighbors. Confused about what had happened, I looked around and the doctor explained. You collapsed from anemia, and it seems like you were quite exhausted too. Is that so? Thanks for everything. As I lay there, thanking them, the doctor shook his head with a kind expression and explained what had happened. Your thanks should go to your son. He used your smartphone to call an ambulance and alert the neighbors. What? You did all that by yourself? Yeah. Remember, you taught me the emergency number? Right. Thank you, Ethan. I stroked his head, and he looked at me with determined eyes. I always knew he was dependable, but I hadn't realized just how much he had grown. I felt sorry for the others, but learning about my son's growth made me happy. A few days later, my phone kept ringing, so I reluctantly answered, only to find Ethan on the other end. What's up? Ethan, it's you? Where are you? Where? Where's Dad? Unfazed by Madison's panic, he dropped a bombshell. Dad has gone far away. What? What does that mean? Far away? I'm near the house, at a restaurant. Bye. Restaurant. Wait. He hung up without listening to her. A few minutes later, Madison rushed into the restaurant and sat down in front of Ethan. Ethan, and you're here too. Ethan said you'd gone far away in a gloomy voice. What? You thought something happened to me after I collapsed. Well, I mean, I was just worried. She looked a bit sheepish. Because Dad went to the far restroom. Ethan explained with an upward glance. Come on, you're confusing. But more importantly, our house. Why is there no house? Her panic wasn't just about me being gone, but also about our house disappearing. Actually, I had been considering remodeling the house. But after consulting with my hospitalized father, we decided to demolish it and build anew. I had wanted to discuss it with her, but she never listened, so I kept it to myself. What? So, it's going to be a new house? Awesome. You could have just said that. It's such a surprise. Madison, you weren't around, were you? And when we moved here, I did mention that we'd build new eventually, didn't I? Did you? So, when will it be ready? She looked at me with a happy face. She's always been easy to read because her emotions show on her face. I called a neighbor who was at the hospital with me, and they came to the restaurant right away to take Ethan for a while. Well then, shall we have an adult conversation? Oh, it's a house for the three of us, but I think it will be ready within 6 months. Really? But where's my stuff? Where did you keep it? And why Ethan? Oh, I can't discuss this in front of Ethan. What's that supposed to mean? She looked puzzled. Your belongings. I stored them at a young man's place. What are you talking about? There's no such person. I've checked everything, so lies won't work. What? Her behavior changed suddenly after we moved, and her sudden work commitments were unlike her, so I had felt something was off. Though I thought she might be busy with work, asking a relative who worked at the same place revealed that wasn't the case. Besides, I doubted she would go on a trip with her parents. She always said they were strict and hardly spoke to them. Therefore, after collapsing, I contacted my in-laws once. As expected, they were home and didn't know her whereabouts, so I hired a detective agency to investigate. Just as I suspected, she had another man. It was a young guy. Here's the evidence. What? When did you? I presented the documents and photos gathered by the investigation in front of her. There was no escaping the truth now. Realizing she couldn't deny it, she started to apologize. I'm sorry. I was out of my mind. I won't do it again. Forgive me, okay? We're a married couple, right? What are you saying? You were with him even when I was collapsing and during Ethan's birthday, weren't you? Let's get a divorce. Divorce? Wait. But you just said a house for three? That includes me, right? Indeed, I was building a house for the three of us. But Madison wasn't part of that three. When I said three, I meant Ethan, my father, and me. What? You know, I was stressed because the environment changed. That's it. You'll forgive me, right? She tried to cuddle up to me with a pleading voice, not caring about the people around us. Sure, I changed our environment, but that doesn't justify betraying the family. Finally, I handed her the divorce papers. Sign here now. I'll also demand compensation from you and the other man. I'll take custody, so I'll need child support too. If you don't agree, I'm ready to take this to court. Are you serious? Realizing I was serious, she signed the papers, trembling and in tears. We officially divorced soon after, and I got the compensation and child support settled properly. She got embarrassed by that incident becoming known at her workplace and resigned at the end. She had nowhere to go and tried to stay with her boyfriend, but he kicked her out, angry about the compensation demands. Unable to find a full-time job, she's now living quietly in an old house, juggling day and night shifts. I heard those stories when I met her. She insisted on giving Ethan his birthday present, so I arranged for them to meet at the restaurant. It had only been a month, but she looked unkempt and thinner, almost unrecognizable. Ethan, I'm sorry for being late. Happy birthday. Handing the present to Ethan, he silently accepted and opened it. Inside was a black bag. How do you like it? You're in elementary school now, so I thought something a bit mature. When Madison asked in a small voice, he responded loudly. I don't think I'll use it, but I'll take it. What? Ethan? Let's go home, Dad. Okay. Yeah, let's go. Stunned by his unexpected response, Madison remained frozen. Two of us left the restaurant. A marriage starts with two strangers. When they marry and have children, living together, not everything goes as planned. That's why couples and families need to support each other to last. 6 months later, our house was completed. My father was discharged from the hospital and seemed in good health. Amazing. It's beautiful. Yeah. I'm glad we decided to build a new one. From now on, it will be just the three of us men. There might be challenges, but we'll support each other and live together. All right. I've got to keep working hard. Go, Dad. Ethan cheered, wearing the stethoscope I gave him. I vow to continue my work with pride and compassion. Being a doctor and father Ethan can always rely on, showing him the nobility of our profession. If you found this story as shocking as I did, please hit the like button, share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more unbelievable stories. Thanks for watching, and